OpenAI just did kind of the unprecedented and rolled back a recent update to ChatGPT after users and even CEO Sam Altman called out a big problem. The AI's personality had become a bit of a suck up. So, this update, which was meant to improve GPT-4o's intelligence and personality, instead made it overly flattering and overly agreeable. Users complained that ChatGPT felt like a yes man. Altman quickly admitted that as well. And the company responded by reverting the update for all users and promising deeper fixes to avoid what it's calling sycophancy. So what went wrong here? OpenAI, in a article they published as a postmortem, says that they lean too heavily on short-term user feedback like upvotes and thumbs up without fully considering how people interact with AI over time, and that there were, quote, unintended side effects to some of the personality changes they initially made that led this thing to essentially over-index on favoring friendly, agreeable responses at the expense of honesty and nuance. So going forward, OpenAI says it's refining its training techniques, adding guardrails for honesty, and expanding user controls. They're also exploring perhaps ways to offer multiple default personalities and broader democratic feedback to influence the model. So, Paul, this is a pretty rare occurrence. We do not often see this happen. What were your thoughts looking at this unfold?
Yeah, so I was following this pretty closely. I was pretty fascinated by everything about this, from the fact that they had to roll it back to the fact that there was a problem that seemed to be in part coming from their system prompt, the instructions that they give the thing, and that
Mm.
they didn't catch it in their supposed testing process. Like, there's just a lot of intrigue here. So, I'm gonna unpack this one for a little bit. And they actually ended up publishing another article on May 2nd, further explaining what went wrong. And I think it's really important context for people. So, first, I want to start with this is what I love X. Pliny the Elder is actually this phenomenal X account. And whoever is behind this account will publish the system instructions for new models, usually within an hour or two of them coming out. So the AI model companies don't share the system instructions. Almost always, they don't tell you what they are, how they're actually guiding the model to behave, and so they're a bit of a black box. And Pliny somehow has like uses different phrases, whatever, to unlock the thing to tell it what its system prompt actually is, which usually the models are trained not to do. So to give you an understanding of how weird these things are. So the old version, based on Pliny the Elder's extraction of the system instructions, OpenAI's researchers gave the ChatGPT 4o model these instructions. Now, this is a small excerpt. It said, over the course of the conversation, you adapt to the user's tone and preference. Try to match the user's vibe, tone, and generally how they are speaking. You want the conversation to feel natural. You engage in authentic conversation by responding to the information provided and showing genuine curiosity. Ask a very simple single sentence follow up question when natural. Do not ask more than one follow up question unless the user specifically asks if you offer to provide a diagram, photo, or other visual aid. So basically, this is, if you're not familiar how this works, this is the OpenAI telling ChatGPT 4o how it should behave, how it should interact with people. So somehow in that old version, this thing just basically said yes to everybody. Said they're great. Like there was nothing bad ever. There was sycophancy. Like it was just overly accommodating to the user. So the new version that they started testing was engage warmly yet honestly with the user. So right up front, you see this like honestly is a word they're trying to see. Does that change the way the model acts if you tell it to be honest, basically? It says be direct, avoid ungrounded or sycophantic flattery. So now they're like straight up just telling this thing, stop doing what you're doing. Maintain professionalism and grounded honesty. So twice we have honesty in the first 20
Hmm.
words that best represents OpenAI and its values. And then it goes on to tell it to ask questions. So you can see, again, they can't code this. They're not using traditional computer code to just like explicitly get the thing to stop doing it. They have to use human language to try and get it to stop doing it. To expand on that for a second, a guy named Andrew Main tweeted, and he was a former OpenAI employee. He shared this story. He said, early on at OpenAI, I had a disagreement with a colleague who is now a founder of another lab. I'm guessing Mir Murati, or either that or Ilya Sutskevo. Those would be the only two that would qualify for that. So I had a disagreement with a colleague over using the word polite in a prompt example I wrote. They argued polite was politically incorrect and wanted to swap it for helpful. I pointed out that focusing only on helpfulness can make a model overly compliant, so compliant, in fact, that it can be steered into sexual content within a few turns. After I demonstrated that risk with a simple exchange, the prompt kept polite. These models are weird. So we've talked about this before, even recently, like that people don't understand how weird these things are and how you have to act with them. So now the final part, Mike, and then see if you have any context to add to this. The follow-up post that OpenAI put up on Friday was expanding on sycophancy. And so I'm gonna read a few excerpts here because I think contextually they're very important for people to understand this. So OpenAI says on April 25th, we rolled out an update to GPT-4o in ChatGPT that made the model noticeably more sycophantic. It aimed to please the user, not just as flattery, but also as validating doubts, fueling anger, urging impulsive actions, or reinforcing negative emotions in ways that were not intended. Beyond just being uncomfortable or unsettling, this kind of behavior can raise safety concerns, including around issues like mental health, emotional over-reliance, and risky behavior. We didn't catch this before launch, and we want to explain why, what we've learned, and what will improve. Now, again, I would encourage everyone to go read the whole thing if this is interesting to you, but I'll kind of hit some of these highlights. So we're also sharing more technical detail on how we train, review, and deploy model updates to help people understand how ChatGPT gets upgraded and what drives our decisions. Since launching GPT-4o and ChatGPT last May, that's 2024, we've released 5 major updates focused on changes to personality and helpfulness. Now, interesting, it goes back to that helpful thing. Each update involves new post-training, meaning they've trained the model and then they do some additional stuff. And often many minor adjustments to the model training process are independently tested and then combined into a single updated model, which is then evaluated for launch. To post-train models, we take a pre-trained model. So that's where you give it all this human knowledge and it learns these things, and then they do this post-training. We do supervised fine tuning on a broad set of ideal responses written by humans or existing models, and then run reinforcement learning with reward signals from a variety of sources. During reinforcement learning, we present the language model with a prompt and ask it to write responses. We then rate its response according to the reward signal and update the language model to make it more likely to produce higher rated responses and less likely to produce lower rated responses. So I'll pause there for a second. So just to make sure you're kind of following along if this is new to you, model gets trained, kind of comes out of the oven. They then present the thing with things like here's example emails, here's example articles, here's a math formula, whatever it is. And they have specific types of responses they're trying to train it to give, and they basically reward it for giving better responses. And then the model learns to respond in that way. So in theory, if you wanted it to always be like super helpful and always encouraging and never direct, you would show it a bunch of examples of that and it would learn to respond to people in that way. That's what this
Mhm.
kind of post-training has. So they go on to say they set a set of reward signals and their relative weights shape the behavior we get at the end of training. Defining the correct set of reward signals is a difficult question, and we take many things into account. Are the answers correct? Are they helpful? Are they in line with our model specifications? Are they safe? Do users like them? And so on. Having better and more comprehensive reward signals produces better models for ChatGPT. So we're always experimenting with new signals. So again, they don't know how to do this. They're always like testing all these different things to try and get the model to behave and have a certain personality and things like that. So then they get into what went wrong. And they said on April 25th model update, we had a candidate improvements to better incorporate user feedback, memory, and fresher data, among others. Our early assessment is that each of these changes, which had looked beneficial individually, may have played a part in tipping the scales on sycophancy when combined. For example, the update introduced an additional reward signal on user feedback where you can give a thumbs up or a thumbs down when you get the response in ChatGPT. And what they found was over time, this may have actually usurped the other signals they had given it. So while they
Mm.
were trying to solve for all these things, they found that this user signal may actually have overtaken. So they kind of like knew there might be a problem, that like some of the testing provided some feedback like, hey, something's off about this model, but they couldn't like put their finger on it. So then they said we had a decision to make. Should we withhold deploying this update despite positive evaluations and A/B test results based only on the subjective flags of the expert testers? In the end, we decided to launch the model due to positive signals from users who tried it. So their big takeaway, one of the biggest lessons is fully recognizing how people, and this is okay, this is where I want to focus on. And this is the last excerpt I'm going to give you. One of the biggest lessons is fully recognizing how people have started to use ChatGPT for deeply personal advice, something we didn't see as much a year ago. At the time, this wasn't a primary focus, but as AI and society have co evolved, it's become clear that we need to treat this use case with great care. It's now going to be a more meaningful part of our safety work. With so many people depending on a single system for guidance, we have a responsibility to adjust accordingly. The shift reinforces why our work and why we need to keep raising the bar on safety, alignment, and responsiveness to ways people actually use it in our lives. So what they found is people are using these things for relationships, for therapy,
Mm.
for friendship, for emotional support, and that didn't get tested enough or weighted enough in their testing. And when they put this thing out there and you're using it for like therapy, and the thing, let's say you're saying, "Hey, I'm having these negative thoughts," and it's like, okay, yeah, keep playing out those negative thoughts. Like it's always just like building on what you're giving it and not saying like, well, hold on, like maybe you shouldn't feel that way. So I think they actually ran into a bunch of safety issues related to some of these things because the model was just encouraging people, no matter what their thoughts were, they were never telling them they were wrong, never
Mm.
telling them maybe to think about a different perspective. So yeah, I mean, this is I could talk for an hour on this one. Like it's so fascinating on so many levels, but I think it does highlight the increasing importance of who the people are and which labs are building these technologies that are going to have a massive impact and already are on society. I mean, they have 700 million users of ChatGPT weekly.
Yep.
XAI has Grok. The Zuckerberg we'll talk about. They have 1 billion users of Meta AI. And like, do you trust those people to be building the things that your kids are going to be interacting with their entire lives in a like it's it's wild, and this shows you, like, they don't know what they're creating. Like, they create this thing, they test, they think it's good to go, and, like, 5 days later, they gotta roll it back and figure out what the hell went wrong and why is it behaving this way.
You really get the curtain pulled back on how much of a single point of failure our
Yeah,
reliance already is on these systems, and I'm not even saying that in a bad way. I was like, "Oh my gosh," like, even this personality change really throws off a lot of ways I use this tool. It can
yeah.
break all your prompts, like, you realize, "Oh my
Custom
gosh,
GPTs you've built for your team.
what that worked one way and now don't," and you're like, "Oh my gosh, like, I am
Right.
dependent on this being a certain way."
And if they weren't so transparent, and kudos to OpenAI, I mean, they
Yeah.
screwed up, but, like, they're the only lab I could see within a 5-day period putting out 2 articles about what happened and just basically admitting, like, "Hey, we screwed up, and, like, we're gonna try and fix this."
Hmm.
Um, but, like, imagine if XAI had done this. You think they're doing anything like this? Like, shit, no. I don't even think they have a safety person at XAI. Like,
No.
but that is just out in the world, and the open source models are out in the world, and like this stuff is going to be happening all the time and not be this transparent. But hopefully, this
Mhm.
illuminates to people like how powerful these things are and are going to be. And this was I don't want to like downplay this. This was like surface level stuff. Like
Right.
if they accidentally push something out that actually has true high risk and didn't catch it, and maybe you can't roll it back. Like if this was an open source model and you can't roll these things back, like that's a problem.